Most people think the students who are amazing at math have something the rest of us don't: a special brain, a natural talent, the kind of intelligence you're either born with or you're not. But what if that's completely backwards? What if the biggest reason math feels impossible isn't because you're bad at it, but because you've been practicing it the wrong way your entire life? By the end of this video, you'll understand why some students seem to solve problems almost effortlessly, and you'll have a simple system you can start using today that can completely change the way you learn math. Picture two students sitting in the same classroom. They listen to the same teacher, use the same textbook, and take the same test a week later. One walks out smiling. The other stares at the paper wondering if they even belong in math class. Most people assume the first student is simply smarter. But if you could watch both of them while they studied at home, you'd notice something surprising. The struggling student spends hours reading notes, watching tutorials, and copying worked examples. Everything looks familiar. Every step makes sense while they're watching it. But the moment they're alone with a new question, their mind goes blank. The other student studies differently. They spend less time watching and more time thinking. They get stuck more often. They make more mistakes. Sometimes they even feel slower. Yet somehow, when the exam arrives, they're the one solving problems with confidence. Why? Because your brain doesn't become good at math by seeing solutions. It becomes good at creating them. That's a huge difference. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. You could watch hundreds of videos about balance, steering, and braking. You could memorize every instruction perfectly. But the first time you actually climb onto the bike, you'll wobble. Maybe you'll even fall. That's because understanding isn't the same as ability. Math works exactly the same way. Every time you force your brain to figure out the next step instead of immediately looking for help, you're strengthening the mental connections that make future problems easier. It's uncomfortable, but that's precisely why it works. Here's something interesting. Psychologists have found that people often mistake familiarity for mastery. When you read the same notes over and over, everything feels easy because you've seen it before. Your brain says, I recognize this, and tricks you into believing, I know this. Recognition feels good. Recall builds skill. Those are not the same thing. So the next time you finish watching someone solve a problem, don't ask yourself, did that make sense? Ask yourself, could I solve it without looking? That one question changes everything. Imagine you're working on an algebra problem. After a few minutes, you feel stuck. Most people immediately search for the answer online or flip to the back of the textbook. It feels productive, but your brain never gets the chance to wrestle with the problem. Instead, try something different. Before you look at any solution, spend a few extra minutes exploring. Rewrite the question in your own words. Circle the information you already understand. Try a different method even if you're unsure it'll work. Write something instead of nothing. You don't have to be correct, you just have to keep your brain engaged. Even unsuccessful attempts leave behind clues your brain can connect once you finally see the correct method. Now, here's another mistake almost everyone makes. They solve one difficult question, feel proud, and move on to a completely different topic. That feels like progress. It usually isn't. Your brain learns through repetition with small changes. Once you understand a new idea, don't abandon it. Find several similar questions that use the same principle in slightly different ways. It's like teaching your brain to recognize the same face wearing different clothes. At first, every problem looks unique. Eventually, you stop seeing separate questions. You start seeing patterns. And that's exactly how experienced math students think. When they read a question, they aren't asking, how do I solve this? Their brain is already saying, I've seen something like this before. That's what makes their speed look like talent. It isn't magic, it's pattern recognition built through practice. Here's a challenge. The next time you solve a question correctly, don't celebrate just yet. Close your notebook, turn the page, then solve the exact same problem again without looking at anything. If you can do it from memory, you've actually learned it. If you can't, that's not failure. It's valuable feedback because the goal isn't getting one answer right. The goal is becoming the kind of person who can produce that answer again tomorrow. There's another habit that quietly destroys math progress: constant distractions. You start solving a question, a notification appears. You check your phone for 10 seconds. Then another message arrives. A quick scroll becomes 5 minutes. When you return, it feels like you're starting over. That's because, in many cases, you are. Deep thinking needs uninterrupted time. Every interruption forces your brain to rebuild its concentration before it can continue solving the problem. Those lost minutes add up much faster than most people realize. So the next time you study, give yourself just 20 or 30 minutes with no notifications, no videos playing in the background, and no switching between apps. Just you, the paper, and the problem. It'll probably feel uncomfortable. That's a good sign. Real learning usually does. Now imagine yourself a few months from today. The questions that used to make your stomach drop no longer scare you. Instead of panicking, you know where to begin. Instead of guessing, you recognize familiar ideas. Instead of hoping you'll remember the formula, you actually understand why it works. People around you might think you've suddenly become naturally good at math. Only you'll know the truth. You didn't discover a secret shortcut, you trained your brain to think differently. And once that happens, math stops feeling like a wall standing in your way. It becomes a puzzle you're confident you can solve. So the next time a difficult question makes you want to quit, don't see it as proof that you're bad at math. See it as proof that your brain has finally found something worth growing through. Because the students who become great at math aren't always the fastest. They're the ones who refuse to let confusion make the decision to stop. And that's a skill that will help you long after you've finished your last math exam. If you enjoyed this video, like this video and subscribe to this channel. See you in the next video.